Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Go Awesome. Today, we will be talking about childhood trauma, also known as adverse childhood experiences. Traumatic events that happen during childhood can have deleterious effect that can last a lifetime. So our goal today is to bring awareness to this important topic. We will try to discuss different type of trauma and some coping mechanisms. So girls, have you guys had anything that you could identify as some type of traumatic event during your childhood?
Well, personally, growing up in Haiti, I grew up in Haiti until I was about 14 years old. And just going through and witnessing the amount of protests that we experience in that country, to me, all the acts of violence has been traumatic, to say the least. So there are very different type of trauma that I think we experience and how they impact us in very different ways, whether it's emotional wise or relationship wise or even behavioral wise. um what I would say is, what does everyone, what kind of trauma that you think you've been exposed to or experienced?
I think for me, it was mostly, I think watching unhealthy relationships. So to me, I grew up thinking that all relationships, or when I say unhealthy relationships, I'm talking about men and women, parents, and not necessarily my parents, but I've witnessed as a child a lot of unhealthy relationships, a lot of unfaithfulness in our men. And I think that stayed with me a lot, and the ways that I treat my relationships now, and the way that I view relationships, and my fear of relationship or relationship not working. It was that mostly for me. I think in Black parents, they're always yelling at their kids, always yelling for no reason at their kids, and they're always very, and I'm saying always, but not always, but they're often very impatient with their kids and yelling at their kids. Uh, I'm not going to keep going, but also, I didn't experience that personally, but I often see a lack of affection, especially from the father. So, or Black men are not very expressive, and they don't know how to show affection to their kids. So a lot of kids, and especially I think for young men, it's they grew up with a father wanting a specific career out of them, or they grew up with a father wanting them to be like them, and that causes some sort of friction in their relationship, or some sort of disappointment that they see in their parents' eyes. And I think that's traumatic, like that's some kind of trauma for kids.
And just so we be sure, not all Black men.
Yeah.
Just to cover that, not all Black men, but there is a lot of that in our community, I would say.
Yeah, I also have to agree with you, Woodland. Yeah, I experienced a lot of just the lack of intimacy between like some of the interpersonal relationships too. The lack of like transparency. I think that's also a form of trauma. And also, yeah, we all grew up Haitian, and I witnessed it with my own family as well as like with my cousins and stuff. But like what we like to do a lot is we like to compare our kids, or at least the older generation likes to compare their kids. And it just creates like an unhealthy like competition within us. It just creates like, low self-esteem within your child, because, that child will never be somebody else. They will only be themselves, and they can only like live up to their own capabilities. So yeah, I would have to say those are the things that I've struggled with, was just like learning that like I shouldn't be competing with those around me, that I should be competing with myself.
It's a very good one.
Yeah.
For me, is feeling that I was always in the wrong. Like growing up, I always felt like there was nothing that I could do to satisfy my mom. It doesn't matter if I get good grades in school, you could have done better, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
And also, to what you said, comparing me to other kids. And I feel like my mom, I'm not sure, and I love my mom. You know, we all love our parents, but I don't know what it is that what happened in her child, like during her childhood, or things that she might have wanted to do. But if she would say to me at when I was about like 14, 15, or 16 years old, I can't expect more from you because you're my child. And I didn't know what she meant by that. It was just a statement she would put out there, but I don't know where that's coming from. So thinking back, that actually kind of stayed with me because it's almost like you're setting me up to think that I'm never going to do anything right because you're my mother. And to this day, I never really had the courage to ask her. Maybe it's because I'm afraid of the answer, but that really had, lasting effect on me. And another thing, you guys mentioned affection, and I've always felt, and I said that to my mom last year. I talk about my mom, it's because my dad died at a very, like, I was 8 years old when my dad died. So I kind of always just had my mom. But I can't remember when I have heard my mom said, I love you. Um, I know she loves me, but she never said it to me. And I remember last year I said that to her, and she actually, for Christmas, she wrote me a letter saying that she might have never said it, but she actually wrote me this very long letter telling me how much she loves me and everything. It's not just providing for me, but all the sacrifices that she had made for me. So at least I felt that I needed that, and this was the greatest gift that she could have given to me.
That's beautiful.
To
That
go
is
off of
really
what you said, Jeff, we have to also understand that childhood trauma is a cycle. It goes from generation to generation. Personally, when I look at my family, before going to therapy, I used to blame my mom for a lot of stuff that I was dealing with in my life. But then I realized that she's that way because she experienced it from her parents. So she couldn't, get the help that she needed. She didn't get the help that she was supposed to get. So I think in a way, it I can't blame her because she didn't know any better. And that's what I'm trying to. I think in general, this is the cycle that we're trying to break by getting help, so the next generation won't be affected by it. The love thing that you mentioned, the lack of love, I've experienced it, but then she didn't get it herself. So if you don't know how to love, how can you love somebody else? And more so for me, I realized is that her waking up in the morning to make me food was her way of showing that she loves me.
Mhm.
Sending me to private school in our country in Haiti was a way for her to say that she loves me. Her bringing me here, that's another way of her showing that she loves me. Because granted, there are a lot of children that don't have the same benefit that I have. their parents are here and they're still back home. I'm not saying like, anything is wrong with being like, in Haiti, and I love my country dearly, but she gave me an opportunity. And I think in a way it's because that she loved me, although she's not, showing me her love language the way I want it to be shown to me. But I kind of understand her situation, where it came from. And yeah, would I want it to be better and for her to wake up every day to tell me that she loves me? Yeah, I would want that. But I understand and I'm able to cope and deal with that. And taking the little stuff that she do outside of her schedule for me as a way of her loving me. And a way I'm coping with it differently is that with the people that I'm around now, verbally, I'm expressing to them, hey, I care for you. Hey, I love you. And by me doing that, it's also helping me to heal in a way. So I don't know if you guys ever experienced that, but that's my situation when it comes to childhood trauma.
I think what we do, as a child growing up, our parents, they're are heroes, there are everything, and we forget to see them as human themselves, and we can't, because we're still at at an age where we're processing and getting to know relationships and people's behaviors and emotions. So if that's the person that brought you to this planet, they're kind of like, for me personally, I cherished my father. I thought he was, that was the man I looked up to. And that's what we do as children. We don't even see them as human with their own emotions and their own problems and their own issues that they deal with. So learn part of realizing that, and realizing that our parents or people too that are going through the same thing that we're going through at this age is definitely a way to forgive and to cope with our childhood traumas.
Yeah, I think it's important that we do the work of becoming aware of the things that affected us as in our childhood, and the things that would probably explain our behaviors today. Because I think in a way we don't realize how much those things block us today. They block us in our career, they block us in our self-confidence, they block us in our relationships. So I think it's important. I did that this year. And also what I did is I had to learn to forgive. So forgive my parents for the things that, and most of the time, the beauty of it is most of the time they don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not aware of it, right? But you can't give what you don't have. You can't give affection that you've never received, right? If you don't know, if you never learn how to express yourself, how to give affection, then there's no way. So I had to understand that. I had to sit down and look at their own childhood and look at what they were lacking, right? And so I had to do the work, forgive them. And you don't know how much that just unblocked me in my life. And just there's a sense of relief that I have right now that I didn't have before. But it's a work that I have to continuously do, right? And you kind of have to try to convince yourself and brainwash yourself that those things that you thought that were, let's say I think that I'm not good enough to be loved, kind of have to work on convincing yourself that you are. Yeah. But those are daily works that you have to do.
Now, guys, we've talked about this in general and how it's impacted our life. Can you guys give some examples of individual acts that correlate to how you might feel as an adult? Like you mentioned before with the excessive yelling that some parents do. Personally, for me, that created a deep fear of authority where I couldn't express myself as an adult. I was, you know, if somebody was in a higher position, whether they were wrong or right, I wasn't able to confront them and tell them, you know, hey, this is my opinion and I feel like you're wrong about this. And that came from me being yelled at a lot as a child. So do you guys have any example of a specific act that has impacted you in adulthood?
Yeah, I think one thing that that really stuck out for me, and part of the reason why I began to do the work and I started going to therapy, was that I realized that I was being extremely demanding and really hard on myself. And the people at work saw it. It's almost like I set myself up to be this perfect employee. I didn't allow for any mistakes. I wanted to be the best, and I think it's okay. And I think there's a healthy level of that kind of aspiration, but you can't set yourself up against that kind of a standard. You're never going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes, and you have to be okay with making mistakes. And that's something that I had to learn. But I think it came from just the fact that our parents, and again, they didn't know any better. But they set us up against these impossible standards at times. They compared us to people that we were never going to be. They I think they do it for our own, our own benefit and and our own well-being. But we've all been told that we're going to be doctors, lawyers, or engineers. We were always set up to these these very high standards. And it was never it just wasn't preached to us that it's okay if we don't reach those things too. That there are other options out there other than just those three options. So yeah, I realized that at work, and I think I made more room for mistakes and obviously learning from my mistakes too. Yeah.
For me, it is still feeling unloved. I never felt like anyone loved me, and I think I feel that way because of the fact that I did not hear it enough. And what I what I am doing right now about it is telling my daughter every chance I get how much I love her, and she's very open with expressing herself and telling me and everyone, like her grandma or other family members, that she loves them. Because I think what we need to get out of this first part, is we cannot perpetuate these unhealthy habits. We need to do better, and either with our kids, or like you mentioned, Sarah, with friends. If it's something that impacted you negatively, during your childhood, you have to make a conscious effort to do better. So that's what I'm doing. I'm telling my daughter and everyone that I know that I love them, because I know how important it is to hear it and to know it and to feel it too.
Right.
And it's
I think
important to validate their emotions, because I feel like back home, when I mean back home, I mean in Haiti, you know, our emotion weren't validated.
Right.
It's like you really don't have a voice. If you're younger, you can't really speak to
Yeah.
an adult. Like there's no such thing as having like a voice.
Mhm.
So it's gonna be common for us to go through what we go through, because we don't trust them enough to go to them and talk to them about what's taking place in our life, how are we feeling inside. So I think it starts with validating your children, validating their words, trusting them, talking to them, creating that
Safe space.
a bond, yeah, a bond, like like you say, like a safe place where they could come and talk to you. I think that's where it should start.
Right. And to me, I feel like it's such a a misguided sense of respect, you know, where you associate
Mhm.
the child talking back to you and expressing how she feel as a lack of respect.
Yeah.
So we should, I guess, start seeing our children as individuals, you know, as people that, you know, they're human, you know.
Tiny humans. They're tiny humans.
They're
Yeah.
tiny
Absolutely
humans,
humans,
exactly.
exactly.
So
With
they might
feelings
have
just like you.
right, they might have not as much understanding of life or situations or whatever, but they are learning, and they're learning from you, and they're learning based on what you're giving back to them. So childhood trauma is something that, you know, it could be as small as a child feeling neglected for a period of their life, and it could be as big as child abuse or sexual abuse in a child. It could be as little as witnessing a earthquake or a tornado, but it could be as
A
high
divorce.
as a divorce.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
And
it,
I feel like in a way that's why it's more common, like, you know, childhood trauma is more common in the Black, in the Hispanic community than it is to the white community. Because I feel like most white parents, they're more open. They talk to their kids. And to us, like we said, it's more so like, you know, we aren't validated.
I feel like
So
the white kids live different forms
yeah.
of
Yes.
childhood.
And
Yeah.
Some of them the
and I,
same.
Yeah, that's what I
but
think
different
too.
childhood
It's
trauma.
I think there's your statement, Sarah. I think there's more that goes into that, because if we take statistics where you know, when you take income, medium income, and you know, within like Black
knowledge.
households and Hispanic households, I think maybe Black parents, and I'm not generalizing, they're under more stress, and that also translate into how they, you know, they don't have enough time for their kids.
Yeah.
You know,
Because,
a
you
lot
know,
of
both
yeah, so
parents have to
there
be
are more factors that go into it, and that's basically probably a discussion of, that we would need to for
Definitely.
another day.
Yeah.
But I do see what you're saying.
Definitely. And there are so many things that can be associated with childhood trauma, and it's not, it, like you mentioned, there may be a social economical aspect of it as well. But no matter what form it comes in, and you know, and if you've experienced it yourself, at this point it's learning acceptance, and it's learning to forgive your parents, and it's doing the work and putting in the work to help you overcome the difficulties that you're experiencing.
Yeah, and also is you have to seek help, talk to someone.
That's correct.
And that's how that's like, you know, to cope. It's okay to not be okay.
That's correct. And yes, it's okay to seek help and to definitely talk to somebody and not feel embarrassed by your childhood traumas, because we've all dealt with them. It happens to all of us, and all of us are dealing with some level of childhood trauma. With that said, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Let's Go Awesome. We do post our episodes on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on your notifications so you can get all the new episodes. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.